One of my favorite cartoons from a pastor's magazine had "For God So Loved the World" graffitied onto a building. And the caption below said, "Evangeliism." Well, we don't encourage painting buildings unless you're employed to do so. But I must admit there is some funny graffiti out there. A huge billboard says, "This year thousands of men will die from stubbornness," and below it says, "No, we won't." Spray painted on there. Scrawled in large print on a Chicago building are these words, "Graffiti keeps rent low," and it does. On a lane closed road sign, the letters P and T are added so it says "Planet Closed." Below the sign, in case of fire, "Do not use elevator," someone spray painted "Use water." That's a pretty good idea. In large letters on a plywood divider in the city of Calgary, it said, "Bill Posters will be prosecuted." And below it says, "Bill Posters is an innocent man." On the back of a broken down park bench that looks like an elephant sat on the thing, it's sprayed, "Chuck Norris sat here." In huge letters on a brick building in Los Angeles are two words, "Panic calmly." And on this spot on New Year's Day 2000, nothing happened. Well, something amazing did happen that day. It all started in Australia back in the 1940s when an illiterate alcoholic heard a sermon and came to faith in Jesus. He was cured of his alcoholism, got into a church, and grew in his relationship with God. One day he heard a preacher shout one single word in a sermon, and it became his wish that all of Sydney, Australia would hear that one word and contemplate what it meant. The preacher described it to him as a one-word sermon, and when he did, it was like a lightning bolt of revelation struck that former alcoholic's heart. So he found some chalk and in beautiful flowing script wrote the word on the sidewalk. His name was Arthur Stace, and he had no idea how he, who had never learned to read or write, managed to write that word. For the next 35 years, he wandered through the streets of Sydney at night and in the early mornings, writing the word wherever he could in the same artsy script on buildings, sidewalks, and subway walls. One newspaper estimated that he would go on to write that one-word sermon, get this, 500,000 times. Now, the city took notice, and newspapers searched for this mysterious chalk artist, but no one could discover his identity or photograph him, and he never stepped forward. And then, in 1956, a preacher caught him writing the word and learned his name. In 35 years, only 4 photographs were taken of the secretive Arthur Stace. The story became such an important part of Sydney's folklore that it took center stage on New Year's Eve 1999, the eve of a new millennium. As many were huddling in their homes, believing that Y2K would usher in the end of the world, TV networks around the world brought New Year's Eve fireworks and festivities from New York to Amsterdam. But the city of Sydney, Australia stood out as it honored Arthur Stace by emblazoning that one word across the famous Sydney Harbour Bridge. It looked handwritten, except it was the size of the massive structure. The word? Eternity. During the fireworks show, cameras focused in on that one word, and millions of viewers worldwide heard the story of this former alcoholic who found Jesus. It's not bad for an illiterate man with a piece of chalk, right? For the elusive Mr. Eternity, as newspapers dubbed him, it was his way of asking others to consider their eternal destiny and trust Jesus. For some, it was just a curious sight. For Christians, it was a welcome reminder that whatever the future holds, God holds us in His hands. A reminder of the wonderful promises we have in Christ, that we have nothing to fear, my friend. He will be with us, and He will one day bring us home. Laughter is phenomenal medicine. Share it, like it, pass it on by subscribing to the button that you subscribe to. Then take the rest of the day off.